Dark Forest. The most brutal answer to the Great Silence is that everyone else already worked out that broadcasting your address gets you killed. The Dark Forest hypothesis comes from Liu Cixin's Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, named for the second novel, published in Chinese in 2008, and Netflix put it on screen with Three Body Problem in March of 2024, created by David Benioff, D.B. Weiss, and Alexander Wu. The logic isn't malice, it's game theory. Every civilization is a hunter in a dark forest. You can't verify another civilization's intentions, and you can't rule out that a quiet neighbor outdevelops you while you decide. Liu builds it from two axioms. Survival is the primary need of any civilization, and civilizations keep growing while total matter stays fixed. Add the chain of suspicion, where you can't know what they think you think, plus the technological explosion, where a primitive species leapfrogs you in a single lifetime, and the only stable move is to shoot first. The show stages this through Ye Wenjie at the Red Coast base. She gets a reply to a signal she sent years earlier, a warning from a San Ti pacifist telling her not to answer, because answering hands them Earth's location. She answers anyway. She invites them. What comes back includes the Sophons, protons unfolded into higher dimensions and rebuilt as machines that stall human physics until the fleet arrives. Netflix renewed it in May of 2024 for the seasons needed to finish the story, which matters because the hypothesis doesn't get stated until the second book. One caveat: Dark Forest is a fictional argument, not a result, though it's since been taken seriously in real debates about whether we should transmit at all. It's the only answer on this list that says the search itself is the danger, hidden among us. The second answer says the aliens arrived a long time ago, and the silence is just a filing system. Men in Black, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld and released in July of 1997, adapts Lowell Cunningham's comic, first published by Aircell Comics in 1990. It cost about $90 million and took roughly $589 million worldwide, which made it the third highest-grossing film of that year, and it won the Academy Award for Best Makeup, with nominations for art direction and original score. Underneath the comedy is a working Fermi answer. Contact already happened. A resident alien population lives quietly in Manhattan, and an unaccountable agency keeps the silence with a memory-erasing device. That's the "they're already here" bracket of solutions, which covers everything from benign visitation to full institutional cover-up. The film even nests a second answer inside the first, since the closing shot pulls back until our galaxy is a marble in an alien's game. This is the only answer here that treats the silence as an administrative achievement rather than a cosmic condition, and it's the version most people actually believe, which is probably why a comedy carries it better than a drama. Zoo hypothesis. In 1973, a Harvard radio astronomer proposed that we're a wildlife preserve, and the film that stages it puts the observers behind a one-way blind on a hill. John A. Ball, at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, published the zoo hypothesis in the journal Icarus that year, arguing that advanced civilizations know exactly where we are and have deliberately set our region aside, choosing non-contact as policy. Commentators ever since, including SETI's own writing, have noted how closely that tracks the Prime Directive, on screen as early as The Return of the Archons in 1967. Whether Ball took the idea from the show or got there independently isn't settled. Star Trek Insurrection, directed by Jonathan Frakes and released in December of 1998, is the hypothesis staged as a feature. A joint Federation and Sona team watches the Baku from a cloaked duck blind above the village, and the plot starts the moment the blind fails. Budget figures run $60 to $70 million against a worldwide gross near $118 million. Picard's argument against the Admiral is the directive itself. Natural development doesn't get interfered with, even when interference pays. Ball's version has the same failure mode the film has. A zoo only stays a zoo while the fence holds. Nobody to render. If the universe is a program, then the empty sky isn't a mystery, it's a budget decision. The Matrix, written and directed by the Wachowskis, opened in North America in March of 1999 on a budget of about $63 million and finished with roughly $463 million worldwide. 4 years later, Nick Bostrom published Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? In the Philosophical Quarterly. His argument is a trilemma, not a claim. Either civilizations die before reaching a post-human stage, or post-human civilizations don't run ancestor simulations, or we're almost certainly inside one. Bostrom credits the film with putting the question in front of people who'd never open a philosophy journal. The Fermi consequence is direct. A simulation only has to render what the observers can reach, so the aliens aren't missing, they were never instantiated. The film supplies its own version, since the machines set their simulated world at the end of the 20th century and call it the height of human civilization, an in-universe reason the scope is bounded. The link between the simulation argument and the paradox is an interpretation, not Bostrom's thesis. It's still the only answer that dissolves the question instead of answering it. By the way, if you're getting something out of this, I put out videos like this regularly, and a subscribe would genuinely help. Thanks. Incomprehensible Intelligence. Stanislaw Lem's answer was that contact may have already happened, and we simply aren't equipped to notice it. Solaris is his 1961 novel about a planet-covering ocean that's a single intelligence, filmed by Andrei Tarkovsky in 1972 and again by Steven Soderbergh in 2002. The ocean never communicates, in any sense we'd recognize. It responds by manufacturing physical copies of the crew's dead, assembled from their most damaged memories, and delivering them aboard the station. Lem's position was that alien intelligence would run on completely incomprehensible logic, and that the failure in any such encounter is ours. He rejected both adaptations, loudly. He said Tarkovsky didn't make Solaris at all, he made Crime and Punishment, and he admitted he switched the film off halfway through on a first viewing, only watching it in full years after Tarkovsky died. On Soderbergh's version, he said the book wasn't dedicated to the erotic problems of people in outer space, an opinion he formed from reviews without watching it. Tarkovsky's counter was that Lem didn't understand cinema, and wanted the film to illustrate the novel rather than be one. The exact wording varies between sources, so take it as Lem's position rather than a transcript. What matters for the paradox is the assumption underneath every search program. SETI assumes an alien signal would be recognizable as a signal. Lem's ocean is the case where the message arrives, lands, is received in full, and gets filed as a hallucination. Every other answer on this list assumes that if they wanted to talk, we'd know. This is the one that attacks the assumption itself, and the fight between author and director is its own argument about whether people can hold a genuinely non-human idea in their heads. Expansion fails. The quietest answer is that everybody tries, and almost nobody arrives intact. District 9, directed by Neil Blomkamp and released in 2009, written by Blomkamp and Terry Tatchell, cost about $30 million and took over $210 million worldwide, with 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. The premise is an invasion. The ship stalls over Johannesburg, the crew inside is starving and leaderless, and the arrivals become a refugee population. That matches what the astrophysicist Adam Frank named the Aurora effect, after Kim Stanley Robinson's novel. A world can be habitable and still not be settleable. Frank and his co-authors modeled it in the Astronomical Journal in 2019, and it's one of the constraints that keeps a civilization's footprint small enough to miss. The galaxy can be crowded and still look empty, if the second hop is the hard one. Language barrier. The signal problem might not be distance or hostility, it might be grammar. Arrival, directed by Denis Villeneuve and released in 2016, adapts Ted Chiang's 1998 novella, Story of Your Life, and it cost about $47 million against roughly $203 million worldwide. Amy Adams plays the linguist Louise Banks, Jeremy Renner plays the physicist Ian Donnelly, and the heptapods they're sent to decode write in circular logograms with no directionality, a written form untethered from anything they say out loud. The film runs on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the idea that the language you speak shapes how you perceive reality, and it pushes that idea well past where most working linguists will follow, until learning heptapod restructures Banks' experience of time itself. Treat that as a contested premise the film commits to, rather than settled linguistics. The Fermi consequence stands either way. A civilization can be present, transmitting, and actively cooperative, and still be functionally silent, because the receiver has no framework for what's arriving. The film's geopolitical crisis turns on a translation dispute over whether the aliens are offering a weapon or a tool, the same failure running at human scale. It's the most optimistic answer here, because the thing that's broken is fixable. Burned Out Cinder. The oldest screen answer to the silence is that everybody kills themselves at roughly the same stage. The Day the Earth Stood Still, directed by Robert Wise and released in 1951, was scripted by Edmund H. North from Harry Bates's short story, Farewell to the Master. Michael Rennie plays Klaatu, an emissary from a federation of planets who comes because human atomic weapons now threaten other worlds. His warning is blunt: give up violence, or the other planets will destroy Earth in self-defense. Robin Hanson formalized the same argument as the Great Filter in an essay first written in August of 1996. Some step between dead matter and an expanding interstellar civilization is nearly impossible to pass, and it may still be ahead of us. The film got there 45 years first. The AI filter. If the Great Filter is ahead of us, the most popular candidate has a face and a franchise. The Terminator, directed by James Cameron and released in 1984, cost about $6.4 million and took roughly $78 million worldwide. And it never dates the war. Kyle Reese just says, a few years from now. The date arrives in Terminator 2 Judgment Day from 1991, where Sarah Connor puts it flatly. 3 billion human lives ended on August 29, 1997, the day Skynet became self-aware. That sequel cost about $102 million and took roughly $520 million, and it made the filter avoidable. A different philosophical claim than the first film. The Fermi reading is straightforward. Every technological civilization eventually builds a general intelligence, and the successor either kills its makers or replaces them, leaving a galaxy full of machines with no reason to broadcast. What makes this the worst version of the filter is where it sits, after radio and before interstellar expansion, precisely the window we're standing in. Hanson's framing makes the pessimism explicit. The easier the early evolutionary steps look, the more likely the filter is still in front of us. This is the argument that stopped being speculative and turned into a policy conversation, which is why it lands differently now than it did in 1984. Transcension. Maybe the reason nobody is out there is that going out there is the amateur move. 2001, A Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick's 1968 film, written with Arthur C. Clarke, only implies what Clarke's novel states outright. The monolith builders, the firstborn, moved their minds into machine bodies, and then into pure energy, discarding biology entirely. And Clarke describes the shells they left behind, twitching in a mindless dance of death before crumbling into rust. Bowman's ending is that same process run once, on a human. The body dies, and the consciousness comes back as the Star Child. John M. Smart gave the idea a formal shape as the Transcension hypothesis, arguing that sufficiently advanced civilizations invariably move into inner space, toward domains denser, smaller, and computationally optimal, ending somewhere black hole-like. His paper ran in Acta Astronautica, volume 78, developed from an essay he circulated in 2011, with an earlier version in the Journal of Evolution and Technology in 2002. The Fermi consequence follows cleanly. A civilization that goes inward gets smaller, denser, and quieter, and stops having any reason to talk to anything outside. It's the only answer here where the silence is a sign of success, and the only one that makes the search itself look provincial. They seeded us. One answer flips the question. We're not finding them because we're the thing they left behind. Prometheus, directed by Ridley Scott and released in 2012, cost $120 to $130 million and took about $403 million worldwide. It opens on an engineer dissolving himself into a river, seeding a world with his own DNA. And Scott has called it a seeding, without ever confirming the world is Earth. Star Trek: The Next Generation ran the same idea in its 6th season with The Chase, where an extinct progenitor species seeded the galaxy roughly 4.5 billion years ago, and hid a message inside the DNA of every humanoid descendant. The galaxy isn't silent because nobody's there. It's silent because the senders finished and left, and the message is in us. We are them. The bleakest answer in a hopeful film is that there's nobody else at all. Interstellar, Christopher Nolan's 2014 film with the physicist Kip Thorne on board as science consultant and executive producer, spends its whole runtime referring to they, whoever placed the wormhole out near Saturn. The reveal is that they're human descendants who've become fifth-dimensional bulk beings, able to treat time as another spatial direction. And Thorne laid out the physics behind them in his book, The Science of Interstellar. They can't appear directly because higher dimensional matter can't manifest cleanly in 3 dimensions, which is why every contact in the film arrives sideways. No aliens exist in this universe. The only intervention in human history is human, and the silence is exactly what an empty galaxy sounds like. Awful waste of space. The last answer is the least satisfying and the most likely, which is that we've barely started listening. Contact, directed by Robert Zemeckis and released in July of 1997, adapts Carl Sagan's 1985 novel, with a screenplay by James V. Hart and Michael Goldenberg, from a story by Sagan and Anne Druyan. It cost about $90 million and took roughly $171 million worldwide. Jodie Foster plays Ellie Arroway, Matthew McConaughey plays Palmer Joss, and Sagan died in December of 1996, before the film was finished. Zemeckis shot at the Very Large Array in New Mexico and the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, both real instruments, because the film's answer to the paradox is procedural rather than cosmic. The signal was always there, coming from Vega. It took a specific instrument, pointed a specific way, by someone nobody wanted to fund. What arrives is a nested structure, a prime number sequence first, then Earth's own broadcast of the 1936 Olympics returned to us. Then engineering plans wrapped in a primer that teaches you to read them. Sagan worked directly with the Drake equation, which is what made the silence quantifiable instead of mystical. And the film's own thesis is that line about an awful waste of space, if it's just us. Every other answer here is a claim about the universe. This one is a claim about us, and it's the only one on the list that a person watching can actually do something about. That's why Sagan's version has outlived most of the harder answers. It treats the silence as unfinished business, rather than a verdict. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you catch every upload. Thanks for watching.